either. So he'll have to join when he can, as long as he's here by 6. If we just want to double check that the attendees can hear us, please, Adele.
Okay, so
Wanted to bring them forward.
Oh, 1 second, my technology is not working now. Good job we checked at that point. Catherine, it's not letting me do anything with it. I've been taken out as co-host. 1 second, let me just email Natasha.
Sometimes the co-host doesn't work. I don't know why.
Yeah. So she'll probably just transfer over the host to me in a minute.
Yeah.
Who's down as host, Adele?
Huh?
Who's down as host for this? Is it you?
Well, it was Democratic Services, and then it was me, and then I just passed it back to Natasha because we're trying to broadcast, but I think it's going to have to come back to me.
I think we are live.
We are live now, yeah.
They're on YouTube.
So if Natasha just puts the host back to me now, then we should be, then I'll check the, I've got it now. We're good. Okay, right. I'm going to just promote Mr. Ellis to panelist. Okay, so who should be there for you, Chair? Mr. Ellis.
Can't see him. Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Although I can't see you, but are you doing this by telephone?
No, laptop. Doing it on my laptop, so I thought you'd be able to see me, but yeah, you can't. Sorry.
No. So perhaps you need to switch the video on.
Okay.
I think there's a button on the left-hand side.
Okay.
Hello. Hi. We can see you now, Mr. Ellis.
Okay.
No, we can see you. Thank you very much. Welcome.
I'll put him back to attendee now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Richard Cooper.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Cooper should be a panelist now.
Yeah. Just all I can see is the name. I can't see the video. So, Richard Cooper, can you hear us? No. Mr. Cooper? No, we can't hear Mr. Cooper.
No. 1 second, let me just go, because there was 2 for Mr. Cooper. So 1 second, let me just promote the other one, because it could be that it's not his audio. So 1 sec. I've got both of his in there now.
Okay. Mr. Cooper, can you hear us?
He's on mute, so I'll just unmute.
Mr. Cooper?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
You can hear us, although we can't see you. So are you?
I am on 2 devices, one for audio and visual, and yeah, so I can see you all.
Right, you can see us all, but we can't see you.
Okay. It worked last time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chairman, I understand it's 3 minutes for public speaking this time
now,
round.
yes.
Yeah, right.
3
okay,
minutes.
good.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Cartwright, if he's there.
Yes, 1 second. So I've just promoted him to panelist.
Go, Simon.
He's on mute as well.
Yeah, leave it with me. Okay, cheers.
Hello, Mr. Cartwright. Can you see us and hear us?
I can, yes. Can you see and hear me?
No, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Right. Well, that's probably not a bad thing.
All right. It might be something to do with your video camera or your camera on your laptop if you're using that. I need to switch it on.
Margaret.
Hello.
Councillor Lumley says that he's having difficulty getting in. Don't know whether somebody could assist him.
Could you do that, Sarah?
Yes, I'll give him a call. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And we haven't got Jacob, Councillor Wilkinson or Mark Jackson yet,
No.
but perhaps we can double check those before we move on to that particular item on the agenda. I'll try and remember. Thank you. Any joy with Councillor Lumley?
Catherine's ringing.
Is it
I
ringing?
will.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
still not a participant. He's still not a panelist at the minute.
Okay, thank you. But I dare say I can actually continue now and just start my introduction and then wait for Councillor Lumley to come along.
Yeah, that's fine. I suppose we just need to bear in mind that if he doesn't attend by the start of the first item, then he may not be able to vote on that item. So
yes, yeah. Right, I'll just take my time then, I think. Hopefully he'll be around. Welcome everybody to another remote planning meeting. A bit of general housekeeping that we unmuted. Right, first of all, a little bit of general housekeeping. I am Councillor Margaret Glancy, Chair of the Planning Committee. And prior to this evening's meeting, we have been testing the technology and confirmed the speakers are in attendance, but we are still waiting for 2 other speakers and they are on the second item on the agenda. So we will double check those before we start that agenda item. I can also confirm that I can see and hear my fellow participating members, apart from Councillor Lumley, who hasn't joined the meeting as yet. But again, we'll double check that before we start the agenda item. I would like all members to confirm that they can see or hear the proceedings and other attendees. So I'm just going to go down the list now. If you can confirm that you can see everybody on your screen and you can hear everybody as well. If you'd like to unmute everybody, please, Adele, then it saves doing it individually.
yeah, I've done that.
Thank you. Right, to Councillor Bindloss. Can you hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Yeah, hear and see.
Chandler.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes.
Thank you. Obviously, I can hear myself. Councillor Higgins.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Present.
Councillor Lumley, we haven't got as yet. Councillor Posner, who's the Vice Chair of Planning.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's been dead a long
Councillor
time.
Steadman
Yes.
and Councillor Wood.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. We have a team of officers present as well this evening. We have the Solicitor to the Council, Mr. Power, the Assistant Director for Strategic Planning and Regulatory Services, Mr. Jim Worley, Development Manager Louise Parker, Our Director for Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer, Adele Wiley, and members of our Democratic Services team who are taking the minutes and assisting with Zoom. And they are Sarah Evans and Catherine Richards. Members speaking, please use the raise hand facility on your screen, and a member of the Democratic Services team will make a note and inform me accordingly. I would just ask that you bear with us. It may be a slow process, but we will get down to you eventually. Members voting, please note a remote member participating in a vote will cast his or her vote as if participating in a recorded vote. So I'll then ask each member for their vote and go down a list, an alphabetical list. So I'd like you to say for, against, or abstain. All microphones will be unmuted while the vote is being recorded. And following the vote, all microphones will be returned to mute. Disruption to remote conferencing. I refer you to the remote meeting procedure rules. In the event of a link failure for all attendees, I will call a short adjournment for up to 5 minutes. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting will be adjourned to a later date. In the event of a link failure to individual members, the remote members will be deemed to have left the meeting at that point of failure. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting,
I did it automatically. Sorry.
If the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that. Excuse me. Then, lost. Sorry, I've got a problem with mine now. What on earth is
We
it?
can still hear you, Margaret.
Sorry.
We can still hear you.
Don't know who is trying to Skype me. Right, sorry about that. Somebody's trying to Skype me at the same time. I must apologise. Right, in the event of a link failure to individual members, the remote members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the items, providing the meeting remains quorate. If there is disruption with a member's connectivity, Solicitor to the Council, Bob Power, will determine whether a member has heard enough of the debate to be able to lawfully vote, depending on the particular circumstances and how much the member has missed. Should the meeting not have ended by 8 p.m, I will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow us to take part in the Clap for Our Carers campaign, to applaud and recognise our NHS staff on the front line against coronavirus. During this time, please turn off your audio and video. This meeting is being recorded, and note it is being live streamed. Please put your phones onto silent during the meeting. Right, first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We don't have any apologies, thank you. To confirm the minutes of the previous meeting held the 30th of April 2020. Everybody has, I presume, has a copy of these minutes. Are you all happy with them? Could we have a proposer and seconder, please, for the minutes? Councillor Posnett.
Yes, I'll propose the minutes.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holmes, are you willing to second the minutes?
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
Thank
I
you.
am. I'm trying
Thank you very much.
lower my hand now.
Right. If you could unmute all the members, please, Adele. I'll go through the list to get a vote on the minutes. Thank
I
you.
have unmuted everyone now, Chair.
Thank you. Right, that's brilliant. Councillor Bindloss? For, against or abstain?
It's muted.
No, he's not.
All members should be unmuted. I'll press
He
again.
might have muted himself.
Yeah.
He's still muted.
No, he's not now. Thank you. Councillor Bindloss?
Not now. I'm sorry, you broke up. Didn't hear what you said. I beg your pardon.
Okay, right. I'm just going. We've had a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the 30th of April. So now we need approval of the minutes as agreed. It's for, against or abstain. So could I have your vote, please?
For.
It wasn't there.
For.
No, you can't do.
Can't.
You can't.
Wasn't
It
there.
wasn't there.
The abstain.
Wasn't
won't you?
there.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown?
Abstain as I wasn't on the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler?
For.
Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Glancy? For. Councillor Higgins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
For.
Councillor Lumley?
It wasn't there.
He's muted. Could we unmute Councillor Lumley, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. No.
Because I wasn't at last planning committee meeting.
Okay. So you're abstaining then?
Yes.
Councillor, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Posnett?
For.
Okay. Councillor Steadman?
For.
And Councillor Wood?
For.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Please note the content of the advice on members' interests, and if you think you have a personal, either non-pecuniary or pecuniary interest or bias, please state that now. We have any hands? Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, I'm raising my hand because I've just had a call to say that people can't get on to view on YouTube. I don't know if anybody can look into that.
Okay, we'll deal with that.
Not on. Okay, but yeah, I've got no interest.
Okay. Councillor Posnett.
Yes, I'd just like to declare my interest as a member of Leicestershire County Council in case it comes up in any of the discussions that we have with these two applications. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I would just like to put on the record, I think it's a personal non-pecuniary interest. Adele can advise me this, Kieran advised me earlier. As I work for a National Housing Association, I do have my organisation has a lot of dealings and funding from Homes England, but I have nothing that's linked or related to this particular application, which is number 2 and St Mary's. And Adele, please advise if I'm correct the way I've done that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that advice. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we have a note of that now. Nobody else, right. Let's get my papers in order, sorry. The first item on the agenda at 4.1 is 19/00707 land at Butt Close, adjacent to Hay Barn, Riverside Road, Melton Mowbray. Who's going to be doing this one? Is it Mr. Worley or, oh, right, it's Louise. Thank you.
Chair.
Hand over to you now.
Thank you, Chair. Please, can I confirm that you can see the presentation in front of you and you can also hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So members will be familiar with the proposal from both the 9th and 30th of April committee meetings. The application was deferred at the 30th of April to allow a further site visit and to clarify the status of the bridleway as a means of access. Therefore, I only want to focus on this first slide of the presentation, as the remaining slides have not changed, but they can of course be displayed again if they're required. You will see from the plan that there is a green dotted line. If I can just outline here from St Leonard's Close, and this goes up along here. So that green dotted line is the existing stable vehicle access route. There's also a further pink line which shows a footpath upgraded to bridleway as a previous planning permission. And I'll just show you here the pink dotted line. Following the deferral at the last committee, the report has been updated. I would like members to consider in particular paragraphs 5.5.2 to 5.5.4 of the report. This sets out that the development of one dwelling would add no major intensification to Riverside Road to detriment of highway safety. The access to the dwelling passes other properties, and Riverside Road was until 2015 the main access drive serving other dwellings. Access was diverted to be off St Leonard's Close in conjunction with a previous planning approval, and it is understood that vehicles may use bridleways with the owner's permission, and in this case the applicant owns the land. Riverside Road is to be a bridleway with the upgrade from a public footpath at the request of Leicestershire County Council in the approval of the application at St Leonard's Close. The works to upgrade from a footpath to a bridleway are being undertaken, and a legal dedication agreement is being signed. Riverside Road has and always will be used by mechanical vehicles, and this situation is not unusual, and neither is the situation changing should this application be approved. Consultation responses have been received from LCC Highways and Rights of Way, and they raise no issue with the application. The proposal is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for officers? Can't see any hands raised. Okay, thank you. We've got two.
Apologies, Chair, but Councillor Holmes does have her hand raised.
Oh, they're up now. Right. Okay.
Followed by Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, Councillor Holmes.
Oh, thank you. I don't quite understand that this is still a footpath and not a bridleway. I have, as you know, Chair, gone into this very deeply with a private solicitor. Probably will have our solicitor looking at this as well, because it still is a footpath. It was also a footpath from the avenue as well, which is still a footpath. It is not designated as a bridleway. A bridleway, surely, am I asking the planning officer, a bridleway is actually for only cycles, not anything else. It is not for anything else that is motorised. And I can't see how that can be changed. I have looked into this, and I've been looking into it for a long time, and talked to my solicitor, who is a planning solicitor.
Do you want to respond?
So can I just clarify what the question was, please?
The question surely was that they're both of the ways into this are still footpaths. They're not bridleways, and they are supposedly going to be upgraded, but that doesn't make any difference. A bridleway does not have anything, but cycles can go along there, and that's no motorized vehicles. And so I just don't understand it.
Okay, so in my introduction to the application, it is noted that it is a footpath, but it is being upgraded to a bridleway, and those works are currently being undertaken. This was at the request of the County Council. The second point is possibly a difference of opinion on the use of vehicles, and I think in the debate we can consult the solicitor on that matter.
Fine, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to comment now, Mr. Power, or will you save it for the debate?
I can do, Chairman. I can do. It's a couple of points, really. It's well accepted that an individual's legal right to gain access is not normally a planning consideration at all. I mean, to give an example, someone may be seeking to gain access to his property via an easement, and it's well established that it's not for a planning authority to investigate the legality of that. And I would say that applies to this case too. But the other thing I would say is, just looking at that plan, it seems to me that the footpath, whilst it runs along the route of, is it Riverside Road? Is that what it's called?
It is, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily extend across the whole width of the road. And apparently vehicular access has been enjoyed along that road to gain access to a barn. So it seems to me that it's perfectly possible for vehicular access to enjoy that road as long as it doesn't interfere with the footpath. And it doesn't seem to me to be material whether that footpath subsequently becomes upgraded to a bridle path. So first point, I don't think it's a material consideration. If there was a problem, I would expect the Highway Authority to have raised it, and they haven't. And normally on matters of highways, the only things that a planning authority should be looking at is firstly matters of safety, and secondly whether the development would give rise to congestion which is severe. And again, they're things that the Highway Authority would readily raise if they were an issue. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for that concise response to the question. Councillor Lumley, did you have a question?
Can I just confirm who is the gentleman who's just spoken? Is he the objector to the application?
Do you mean Mr. Power, who's just spoken?
Yes.
No, he's the solicitor for the committee.
Oh right, sorry, because sorry, that's fine. I was just confirming because
I'm missing on the screen, I'm afraid. But
sorry, that's fine. You know, it's just because it's got Louise Parker, but it's just by his name. That's
you had your hand up prior to Mr. Power speaking, though. Did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to let everyone speak first, like the objector, and then I can come back on questions if that's all right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Councillor Faulkner, do you have a question of the officer before we start hearing speakers?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just going on to the picture we've just seen, it's showing that the proposed bridleway and footpath are part of this application site. Is that correct?
So the land is within the ownership of the applicant, yes.
No, I was asking if it was part of the application site. The whole of the land's in the ownership of the applicant, but
so
is it part
hang
of
on. Right, let me show this again then. Bear with me. So the red line here is the application site, which then goes to here. The remaining land here is in blue, which is the ownership.
Yeah, the line on the extreme right-hand side seems to be the other side. That side there seems to suggest that the footpath and bridleway are part of this application site. Is that correct?
Yes. So the red line goes down here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Chandler. Then we'll move on to the speakers.
It's housing livestock. And if it's housing livestock, it should be a general purpose building under the Agricultural Act. A hay barn doesn't have any livestock and it's not licensed to have any livestock. And I'm very confused by this. I mean, we've put plenty of buildings up and you have to define whether there's going to be livestock in them or not. And if there's any doubt, there have to be general purpose agricultural buildings under the Act of whenever.
Shall we save that question for the debate, Councillor Chandler?
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins, did you have a question relating directly to the presentation?
Yeah, thank you. Again, if the answer's not available, I'm happy to wait, but I'm not sure I know of a policy in regards where any house that's there that we have to have vehicle access to it. So it's just a question to officers. I've tried to find various policies, but I can't see one which says if a dwelling does not have vehicle access, then that's a reason either for or against the application. So it's just a question if officers can come back on that one.
Do you have the answer now, or do you want to?
There's nothing that I'm familiar with. There's no policy that
It's a practical question, isn't it? It would be idiocy for a developer to build a house on land that is landlocked without an access. Is, you know, apart from anything else, it would be a complete waste of investment, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Just to come back on the clarity of that one, and though I agree with what the solicitor was saying, is it would be idiocy to carry on building, but my point in planning terms is it doesn't matter whether for planning permission, which is what this is seeking, it doesn't matter whether vehicle access is there or not. That's what I'm asking for.
So that's planning law, isn't it? Do we have a response?
Planning policy. That's what I'm
not aware of a policy that would cover that. That would require an access. As I say,
yeah. Mr. Worley, did you want to respond?
Yeah, it's wrapped up in the many things that are in policy D1, which requires there to be a adequate access. So what you define to be adequate, to be honest, the policy is aiming at safety.
Safety, yeah.
Adequate. So they're the words to judge.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's move on to the speakers now. We have 2 speakers this evening on this item. The first one is Mr. Charles Ellis, who's an objector. If you could bring him forward, please.
Yes, Chair. I've promoted him to panelist. He'll be there in a few moments. He's there now.
Again. Good evening.
Good evening,
Mr. Ellis. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's 2 specific points I'd like to raise. First of which, I'd like the committee to condition, if they were to pass planning, that St Leonard's Close isn't used as access at all to the site on the basis I don't think it's safe. There's the footpath showed on the diagram, the pink line goes across the road on the blind bend. It's already used by a lot of general public now. My garden is also the other side from my property of St Leonard's Close, and my children are constantly crossing the road. Since you gave permission of the delivery yard, the traffic has already increased by 10-fold, if not more. And it's a close, it's not supposed to be through access. So there's already through access to a stable, which is creating a lot of traffic. And I don't think there should be any increased traffic on that small close. Secondly, I'd like you to consider to protect Butts Field, which, as I understand, is an archaeological site. Every house owner, certainly on our estate, but I think on Chetwynd Drive, understood that to be the case when they purchased their properties. And this developer, unfortunately, doesn't have regard for that. He's quite liberal with his digger. When he built the stables, he dug through my garden, my neighbour's garden, without permission. He's left aggregates everywhere. He's blocked the footpath. He's dug a 6-foot hole, which is still by the footpath now, that's not protected. So the general public could quite easily fall down a 6-foot hole. Yeah, effectively, I think that land needs protecting river condition if possible.
Thank you very much. You're well within your time. Thank you. Do you have any questions of the speaker, members? No, as far as I can see. Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis. Thank you. Our second speaker is the agent, Richard Cooper.
Just promoting him now.
Hello, Chair, can you hear me?
I can. Could I just, I've got Councillor Lumley with his hand up. Did you want to ask your questions?
Sorry, I'll hold on till after. Don't worry.
Yeah, if you would mind, please waiting. Thank you.
I apologise.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
I'll start by reiterating the status of Riverside Road. This is an access drive serving 4 existing dwellings and a hotel car park at the northern end. It has previously provided access to Riverside Farm and the cottage. The road happens also to be the route of a footpath and is being upgraded to a bridleway. This extends beyond the development site and continues along St Leonard's Close, also a road serving a number of houses. Riverside Road has always been used by motorised vehicles. The single new dwelling, in fact, represents an overall reduction in traffic over the road's historical use. Designation of the footpath, bridleway and road access in this area has been overseen with full consent of LCC Rights of Way. They do not object to the proposal, neither do County Council Highways. We've suggested that access for construction traffic be dealt with under condition requiring production of a construction route method statement. This application is for a single house on the edge of an urban area. It's not an unusual scenario, and safety of existing residents can therefore be ensured. I've spoken to you twice now at previous committee meetings with regard to this application. Your planning officer's report has very thoroughly explained the normal planning considerations of principle, character, heritage assets, residential amenity, highways, ecology, archaeology and flooding. In each of these, it's considered that the proposal meets policy requirements. There are no technical objections to the proposal. The scheme is a bespoke response to the site, and we've explained its sustainable credentials to you before. We believe the positive weight afforded to this by the planning officer should be commended. I urge you to support the officer's recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Do we have any questions? I see Councillor Faulkner's got his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just like to ask Mr. Cooper, you just stated that the building of this dwelling would have 3 parking spaces and most likely have 3 cars, would result in a reduction in traffic along the road. Could you please explain what evidence you've got to suggest that the building of a house with 3 cars going there can be a reduction in traffic?
Yeah, so previously Riverside Road served Riverside Farm and the cottage before access was diverted off Syson Grange Lane. So on the basis that there was a farm and or 2 dwellings down on Riverside, accessing Riverside Road, in addition to the 4 houses to the north, the one house, which is the proposal, is a reduction.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
I'm unmuted now, yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask Mr. Cooper then, if there is nothing in the plan, this is a barn or a shed or whatever you like to call it, out in the countryside, and you'd be quite happy then to build a house? Presumably that's okay. Is it to build a house if you've got planning permission for a barn anywhere?
This is not relevant to this planning application.
Well, it is. But my concern is that, and it has been all the time, as you know. But maybe Mr. Cooper is getting this wrong. It's bridleway down to a byway open to all traffic. Is that really what we're talking about? I don't know, because I do know about these things, you know.
Shall we give Mr. Cooper the opportunity to respond?
Yeah,
thank you.
Please.
In my mind, it's pretty straightforward. Riverside Road used to go down to Riverside Farm, and it is a road to 2 dwellings that used to be there. The access to Riverside Farm has been diverted from a different route. this proposal uses Riverside Road, which is a road, to serve one property. It's as straightforward as that, really.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Cooper? No. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Do you have any questions of officers, or do officers want to respond to what they've heard from the two speakers? Do you have any further comments to make? No? Okay, thank you. Do members have any questions for officers? And if you would like to ask a question, raise your hand. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, if I could just ask, just to make it absolutely abundantly clear, my understanding of planning is that we consider the site and the application itself.
Planning merit.
And if officers could just confirm and just make it absolutely clear, my understanding is that the access issue will be something that will be dealt with civilly outside this and is not really relevant for consideration when making the decision upon whether the application should be approved or declined. Am I correct in my understanding?
Do you want to respond to that, either Jim, Louise, or Bob?
I mean, I could respond. Do you want me to respond?
Please.
Yeah. I mean, it just comes back to what I said. The legality of the use of that to gain access is not before us, is not our consideration. And from what we've heard, it seems to me that vehicular access has been enjoyed over that route for quite some time, and has been enjoyed without interfering with the footpath, which means you, of course, become a bridleway.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Brown? Thank you. Councillor Steadman.
Yeah, it's a question for the officers. Mr. Ellis mentioned that could we condition that access to this application site is only from Riverside Road? Is that possible, or is it already a condition on this site?
Would you like to respond? That's been a gift. Louise, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so I'm just running through the conditions now. I mean, I think the advice is if you think something is reasonable and necessary, then conditions are there as an option. There are plan conditions as well, what we've included, which includes access. But obviously that's part of your debate and how much weight you give to that point.
Okay.
Could I just say, Chairman, it's not possible to require someone not to use a public highway, and of course, making an access to a public highway would normally require planning permission.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Lumley.
Councillor Lumley, you're not unmuted.
All right. Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. I was going to ask this similar questions to Councillor Brown and Councillor Holmes regarding the bridleway, but if we are certain, that's fine. It's sorted out, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. Just going on to the consultation and feedback, and from the point that Mr. Ellis raised regarding the site of archaeological interest, if that is the case and it is of archaeological interest, have any English heritage organisations been informed about this? Please. And that's a question to officers.
Okay, so I can answer that quite quickly. If you look at condition 9, we have had consultation responses from archaeology, and there is additional works that are required should permission be granted.
Okay. So, and how are we going to talk about those then? not, you know, have we got to talk about them now or after?
I would think that the condition covers it, but whether officers want to further expand on that.
So the condition 9 is a standard condition, which is a pre-commencement condition, and it asks for a scheme of investigation to be carried out. So should permission be granted, and then prior to any works taking place, any demolition stroke development, then they'll have to do this work before they actually start on site. So the answer to your question is yes, we've consulted and we've got a condition to mitigate against archaeology. But obviously, if that's something you're concerned about, I'll let you debate that later.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, did you want to come in there? I see your hand is raised.
To extend on that, yeah, I think Mr. Ellis's question was about the land next door and whether we can condition that as well, if I caught it right. And the answer to that is no, because conditions can only apply to the development that you're approving. They only occur when you're approving. And I would go further and say they don't add anything anyway, because if there was a condition that said that you can't do works on the adjacent land, you can't do works on the adjacent land anyway, so it's not introducing a level of control that doesn't already exist.
Thank you. And Councillor Faulkner, I see your hand is raised. Is this a question of the officers?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It is, yes.
Okay.
As a matter of a condition, because the access is not at the present time a Broadway, could it be conditioned that should approval be granted that no work is begun until the bridle way has been completed to the satisfaction of whoever does that?
So there is already a condition in place as part of a previous planning permission for the upgrade works, which was requested by the County Council. So it'd be a duplication of that.
Yes, but as the bridle way, that part of what's going to be the bridle way is part of this application site, can we have it conditioned on this application?
My suggestion would be not, because it's not in line with what you're considering as part of the dwelling. Maybe Mr. Power can advise further.
Well, also on that one though, Mr. Woolley said that we could policy D1 says about the access being okay, and as it is at the moment, I don't think it is okay. But that'd be for later. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, Mr. Power has got his hand up to clarify that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I just ask those that have already spoken, can you please lower your hands? Because I've got 4 hands raised here and I don't know who's spoken.
Chair, I think that the only person outstanding is Councillor Steadman. He's had a hand up for a little while, and it's still up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steadman, did you want to ask a question of the officers before we start the debate?
Sorry, yes, this question is actually for Mr. Power as well. He was implying that we couldn't condition access only from Riverside Road for this application site, but we haven't asked Highways to pass comment on the access off St Leonard's Drive.
So that was more of a statement. Did you want to respond, Mr. Power?
It's maybe easier for me, Bob.
Yeah, okay then, Mr. Worley.
I was just going to comment on, yeah, okay.
The house isn't taking access from St Leonard's Drive. And as you heard earlier, that someone suggested we could belt and braces that with the condition if we thought it was absolutely essential. Well, necessary, use the correct word.
Thank you. Right, well, I think that covers all the questions. And so now over to you, members, to debate. Do we have anybody that would like to start? For Councillor Faulkner, as it's in your patch, in your ward.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, I still have concerns about this access being on Riverside Road. I think it's up to standard, and until it's made into a proper bridleway. I don't think it is. So at this point, I won't support this application.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
Yeah. Okay. So having looked at the whole application and looked at the site, really, what is sort of telling me is it's in line with the local plan. There's no concerns with the MPPF. It's acceptable with SS1 and SS2. No real detrimental impact with any of the policies that we have. That's what the paper says. And it's also considered sustainable windfall. I did have a bit of a concern about the archaeological impact, but I'm more happy now that that has actually been addressed and that's going to be conditioned. And I probably think, looking at the history and the issues on the site, I think officers should probably keep a close eye on that, that the actual applicant, if they were going to be granted permission, actually comply with that, due to other things not being complied with. That's a side issue. The only thing that is came with me is the access and the path, etc., and whether there's something that we can do to allay any fears. But on the balance of probability, I think looking at the evidence in front of myself, I'll be minded that I think we'll have to support the application, bearing in mind I've always been told if it's in line with local and national policy, we should follow that route. But if somebody could come up with a solution to the access, I think that would probably sit with me very favourably, rather than having that little bit of a chip on the shoulder around that. Is that something that we should have addressed? So that's my views and that's my understanding of it, and I'm happy to listen to anybody that wants to correct me or point me in down the road of maybe I've misconstrued something, etc. But I'm relatively happy with the application.
Thank you. Could I just say that before I call the next one forward, the Leicestershire County Council were quite happy with the access, from my understanding, and they did recommend that there was an upgrade from a footpath to a bridleway, which the applicant is actually currently at the moment doing. So I don't know whether officers want to enlarge upon that or add some more information.
Chairman,
yeah,
I didn't think that the upgrade from a footpath to a bridleway was material, really.
No.
It simply means that something that currently can be used by people on foot can hitherto shortly be used by people on cycle and on horseback. And it's just a route that runs along this road. It almost certainly doesn't extend along the whole width of it. And we've already heard that vehicles have already enjoyed the opportunity to drive up and down it in the past. So it doesn't seem to me to be a material consideration whether it becomes a bridleway in the future or remains a footway.
Okay, thank you. Point taken. Councillor Holmes, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll have to take issue with the solicitor, I'm sorry to say. The hay barn was given permission in 17. It has been a lot longer time than that for a vehicular access to be acceptable. The other thing is, I was not, in fact, when it first came up, I hadn't been to see the site because I wasn't well enough to go to the site visit the very first time it came up, and I was one that thought this looked a really super looking development. I really did. And I thought it was because I hadn't seen the site, I thought it was the other side. And then when I actually was barred by a vehicle to go and look at the site, and I had to back the site, I couldn't turn round. I know, and I appreciate that talking about a bridleway, a footpath, or whatever it is, but somehow vehicles have to get to a site to build a site, to actually build something. So how on earth are they going to get there? You can build a house anywhere. You could build it in the middle of a field if you wanted to. I know that. You can do it without having planning permission. We know that. But you've still got to get there. And this is called a butt lane. It is a very narrow lane. And this is why I don't understand. We've got this hay barn, whatever it might be called, terribly low for stables, I can assure you. I also was saying, and this isn't to do with this, but the horses looked extremely well. So I do know that. But this was my problem. It's always been my problem. It is a footpath going to a bridleway, but it is incredibly narrow. I mean, we've got to be sensible about this. And I like the look of the house, cannot see where this great big house is going to be put. It's going to be coming right up, as I can see, to the bridleway or footpath or whatever it is, because it's so narrow. And that's really what I just couldn't go for it. And it does say 4.2.7, page 15, this is no made neighbourhood plan which covers this application. There is no made neighbourhood plan which covers the application site. It isn't in our neighbourhood plan or our plan, is it? It's an extra. And so we might be able to build anywhere. That's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Lumley next. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Sorry,
Okay.
can you all hear me?
We
Yeah.
can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, from what Councillor Faulkner and Councillor Holmes have just said, I'm now in agreement with them because I'm concerned about the whole issue. It seems from one party very straightforward, the whole issue. LCC Highways are saying the same thing, but it just doesn't seem right. And I think when you've got, you've got a person that lives on Down St Leonard's Close also saying there's a real issue with access. I don't think I can, be in favour of this application until we get some proper information, moving forward. So that's that. I mean, there are other questions that we need to address that are on the consultation feedback that I don't think we've actually questioned. I know obviously in the planning committee you have got to be careful not to go into different areas because it's just about the application. But can I just ask about one point about the existing boundary hedge should be retained at a maximum height of 2 meters, and also about the existing mobile home on the site that aren't indicated on the plans and unclear about the future of the mobile home. They're just another 2 questions. So if I can get an answer to them as well. But at this moment in time, until we've got a real way forward and all councillors, I think, in agreement with the whole of the bridleway access points, I can't support the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Mr. Worley, or are you?
Can I turn to Louise for the hedge?
Yep. Okay, hedge.
You first,
Okay.
and I'll do the caliver.
Okay.
Yeah, so the hedge, again, if it's reasonable and necessary, you can condition it. What I would say is, though, there is a condition on there with regards to landscaping. So that will be covered as part of it. So it's dependent on how specific you would like to be.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Posnet's next.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to say, I think we've done the access to death. We've talked about it for the last 2 previous meetings, and that's what most of this meeting, apart from Councillor Brown, of course, has have ignored the property. It does fit in with our local plan. It doesn't have it won't have a detrimental impact upon the character of the area. And it also complies with the relevant policies of our Milton local plan. The design is innovative. They've got some good carbon reduction schemes built into the house. Because they're digging down for the house, it won't tower above any other properties. And I think it'll bring a really pleasant aspect to that area when it's up and built. And I would have no hesitation in proposing that we accept this and go ahead and let it be built. So I would propose permit.
I was going to say, is that a proposal? Right, okay. Yeah. Right. I had Councillor Steadman next. Are you willing to second, Councillor Steadman?
Could I ask Councillor Posnett if she would be willing to add a condition onto this, that the access is only via Riverside Road?
Yeah.
Could I?
If that's workable.
Then
Okay.
yes, I will second this application. Like Councillor Brown, I think it meets all the local plan policies. There's nothing that it glaringly goes against. It doesn't come under neighbourhood planning anyway because it's in Melton. So, you know, I can't see a problem with it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Okay, just for clarity, because I think as Councillor Posnett was saying, we were talking about the access and roads, and just for clarity for myself, Riverside Road is on the plan, is the one on the upper part of it, not the one on the which goes round the back. That's correct. Is that right, officers?
Yes, that's correct.
That's fine. That's fine. So yeah, okay. Yeah, I thought Councillor Posnett was speaking a lot of sense there. Is that it does fit in very well with the local plan and the policies. There is no neighbourhood plan. There's a lot of civil matters that have been brought up in the 3 times we've debated this, and we can't go into those civil matters, as the solicitor has said before. The only other question, and again to officers, is in this application site is when the house is built and to take occupation in the application site, can we put any restriction on any mobile homes that are in there? Because I know we've had planning breaches of the mobile home moving from time and time again. Is that a possibility in there? Because I think once this dwelling has been built, there is no need for a further temporary or mobile home.
Thank you. Who would like to answer that one? With Mr. Worley or Ms. Parker? Okay, thank you.
It's gone. I'm pleased to say the mobile home's gone.
I didn't see it.
This, but the other place it was moved to are now gone altogether.
Okay, so okay, I mean, so but could we do a condition on that? And that's just I'm not necessarily asking the proposal and second of that yet, but could we do a condition on that? Because if we don't want it returning again.
I would assume it'd be the proviso if it's on the application land in question.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
within that application site, we basically not another temporary building and the residents go all through this again once the main dwelling is built and occupied.
Okay.
If you can answer that in I think
Yes,
there's
please.
two part, well, a part and a proviso. First part is that doesn't really, conditions are to regulate the development that you're approving, not to prevent another development. So it doesn't quite fit within the scope of section 72. And the proviso is that there are, when you're building a house or any other building for that matter, you are allowed to have a caravan on the site during the build process as alternative premises or as your refuge for bad weather or whatever, as permitted development. And obviously we can't take that away because it's the law of the land.
That's fine. That's been debated, Chair, so thank you.
Thank you. We have now Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief observation, really, as much as a concern on the bridleway, unfortunately, again. Noting going back through the comments over the last few months, particularly over Christmas and prior to that, there was a lot of mention of waterlogging on that site, on that bridleway. And quagmire, I think, was used on more than one occasion. I noticed that there's a lot of MOT stone that's been put down there at the moment. And really, I know from my own experience with that kind of thing that it does become very, 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 very muddy. So the individuals themselves are going to have to deal with that. And also, of course, anybody else wanting to use that bridleway will have exactly the same problem. And, that doesn't have a nasty habit of bedding down into that muddy surface, which could make it, shall we say, unpleasant for anybody wanting to use that, particularly in the winter months. That's just a concern of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Holmes again.
No, not me. I'm not saying anything. No.
The hand is still up. Well, it's gone now, right?
Well, I did put it down.
Lumley. No,
Yeah.
thank you. Councillor Lumley, do you want to speak
Yeah,
again?
thank you,
Your hand is still up.
Just to add on to some more comments, just to say that the actual applicant's actual plans for the building do look very good, I have to say. And from the pictures that we've been given of what it will look like when it's built, does look very good as well. And it actually goes and it's pro climate change type materials that are being used, which is really good. I just want to obviously clarify again that I think, and I know to some council it might seem a bit sort of actually going on a bit, but the access is still a bit of an issue, and I don't think some councillors still are quite comfortable with accepting this until we are absolutely sure on all sides that that all of the residents close by haven't got any more real issues with this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Higgins, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, it's just a point of clarification. For obviously what Councillor Lumley was saying is that we have to also defer to the experts, and we have obviously highways who to refuse it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of concerns about this application, but most of them are civil matters and we can't do much about some of those. So I'm quite happy to go along with the recommendation, but it's been riddled with civil matters. Thank you.
Thank you. And I must apologise, I can't see you on the screen on the right hand side, but you're obviously there somewhere. Thank you. Right, now obviously this will be a, if you could let me know whether you're for, against or abstain, and I'll go through alphabetically. So if we can all be unmuted, which I can see we are, that's brilliant. Councillor Bindloss, are you for, against or are going to abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
For.
Okay. Councillor Chandler?
For.
Councillor Faulkner?
Against, and can I have my vote recorded, please?
Okay, it is recorded. Councillor Glancy, I'm for. Councillor Higgins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Against, and my vote recorded,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. Councillor Lumley? Councillor Lumley?
Against.
For, against? Against?
Yes, against.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Bob.
No, don't worry. Councillor Posnett?
For.
Councillor Steadman? For.
For.
And Councillor Wood?
For.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 for and 3 against. The motion is carried.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Before we move on to item 4.2, can we double check that the 2 other speakers have dialed in and they're waiting to be heard?
Yes, so we have Councillor Wilkinson, we have Mr. Cartwright, and we also have the agent.
Right, we've already checked Mr. Cartwright, so can we double check that Councillor Wilkinson can hear us?
Yes, I'll just promote him to panelist.
Okay.
Councillor Wilkinson should be there now. If you just unmute, then he could clarify that you can hear.
Yeah, I can hear everybody.
Councillor Wilkinson, you can hear us, can't you, and
Yes,
see
I
us?
can, yeah.
Thank you very much. And then we have Mark Jackson from Cushman and Wakefield.
Okay, I'll just promote him as well.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I can hear everyone.
Right. Can you see us? We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, that's probably a good thing. Yes, I can see you though.
All right then. Okay, fine. If you're happy with that, that's fine. Thank you. Right. The next item is 4.2. It's 19/00909/ St Mary's Hospital, Thorpe Road, Melton Mowbray, and it's change of use of the central block and 2 wings, plus outline demolition for all other buildings and structures, and redevelopment of the site for up to 38 new dwellings. Over to you, officers. I think, is it Mr. Worley's going to be doing this one? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a small encyclopedia to update you with. So before before I do that, I'll just give the headlines of it before conveying any of the sort of proper content. So we've got another petition to report, about a dozen or so further objections, making a range of points, some strong words from Leicestershire County Council, and something I think you've been exposed to it, it's fair to say, lots of suggestions and ideas about how the vagrant cells on this site may be treated. Some further comments from the Highways Authority, including quite a lengthy list of conditions and some Section 106 requests that we hadn't had when the report was drafted, and some answers to the questions that came out of briefing on Tuesday. If I can home in on 2 of those, starting with the Leicestershire County Council position, and this relates directly to paragraph 4.5.5, where the as we do, the developer contributions are listed. And I think you'll be familiar to know that what's available on this site gets nowhere near what's been requested. It creates a huge gap. And it's really that gap that Leicestershire County Council are commenting on. And I'm going to read this out in full because it's words that I don't think we've particularly seen before. And it's certainly stopped my tracks. And can I add to that an apology as well, because it landed with me about just before 5 o'clock, which is why they're not with you already. So they rehearse what the requests are, and then go on to say, this is the bit I'm reading. The contributions are essential to ensure that infrastructure required to support the development can be funded. Without these contributions, there's no funding available to pay for these essential facilities. This means that the development is not sustainable, contrary to national and local policy. The fact that the developer has offered £67,000 is therefore very disappointing. And here's the heavy stuff. In the event that the Planning Committee resolves to grant planning permission without the required contributions. Please be advised that the County Council reserves the right to consider taking legal action against the Council to prevent this development from proceeding. They therefore strongly recommend that this application is refused due to the lack of Section 106 contributions, and which for the County Council means it is not sustainable development. And if I can add my own footnote to that, the shortfall at paragraph 4.5.5 that you see at the moment, which is 571,000 pitched against the 67,000 we've calculated as available, is actually grown because the highways things I just referred to require about another 40 on top, maximum 40 on top. So we're looking at a shortfall of over £600,000 now. The other area I'd like to draw your attention to, well, I say that, sorry, it's not in the report, is all the late discussion that's happened around the vagrant cells and the ideas that have come forward about how they may be saved, restored, commemorated, and various permutations of all those sorts of things. These issues really we haven't had time to work out their feasibility or their expense, both of which are important considerations. So I'm a bit reluctant that this application goes ahead when we're not able to conclude on what seems to be emerging as an absolutely key factor, certainly as expressed by public opinion on this case. So net result of all of that, I regret that I feel we should recommend deferral of this item so we can consider that position, and particularly the threat of legal action from the County Council. I don't think we've had, I think that's unprecedented from my memory. And also do some more work on these vagrant cells to see whether they're realistic propositions. So with a heavy heart, I think that's where all this late movement takes us.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That's very sad news indeed. Could I just ask a little bit of advice? Do we have to hear the speakers and things, or can we go straight into deferring this?
Sorry, what I was going to do is invite you to first consider if you want to proceed at all, and then normal rules would take over.
Okay.
If you do, obviously.
Right. Personally, I think because of that news now, it is probably best to defer this. Can I? So do I have to go through and ask for every member to agree with deferral?
It needs a motion and seconding, just like any other position.
So at this point in time, I don't think we're at a point where we can go forward. So I propose deferring in line with Mr. Worley's comments and recommendation. So I am looking for a seconder on this.
I will, Chair.
Oh.
That was Councillor Steadman, I think I saw first. Thank you very much. Could we have a vote on this, please? I'll go through the list as normal. With a heavy heart, it's Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Are you in favour of deferral? Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler?
Yes.
I didn't say yes.
Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Councillor Glancy, obviously I'm for. Councillor Higgins?
Do you just want to go back to Councillor Brown, because he didn't answer when you called him? Another councillor spoke yes instead.
Did he? I thought it was Councillor Brown.
No.
Who said yes?
As Rob said yes for me.
Me.
Oh dear. Right, okay, sorry. Well spotted there, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Brown?
Yes, and are we able to ask a clarifying question at the end? Is that possible, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Higgins?
Yes, and I've got a clarification question at the end as well.
Okay. I'll just make a note of that. Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, and I have two, so a question please at the end, but yes.
Yeah. Councillor Lumley?
Or.
Councillor Posnett?
Or.
Okay. Councillor Steadman?
Or.
Thank you. And Councillor Wood?
4.
Thank you. Should we take the 3 questions now? That's a motion that's passed to defer this, but I will allow 3 questions. It's Councillor Brown.
Oh, if I could add myself, Chair, as well, please. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay to speak, Chair? Yeah.
Yes, of course you can.
Yeah. Thank you. Probably a question for Jim, really. Jim, I presume you've had some sort of communication with Homes England.
Yeah.
That's the first bit. And the second bit is there anything from making this decision? Obviously, I think our hands are completely tied, so fully, agree where we are. Anything that's detrimental for Homes England are saying that by deferral it puts in at risk the development in any way?
No, nothing in those terms. I wouldn't say they were happy with the prospect of deferral on the one hand, but on the other, they did want the opportunity to respond, particularly to the county council's expression of, of challenge.
No, I think that's helpful, and also very helpful Homes England's response. I think that clears up a question the public will have. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, it was very similar, but as we're deferring, I think when it comes back to committee, it's obviously that balance which is heritage versus everything else that the committee will need to balance out at the next one. So if the applicant and officers can present that to us. And just for clarification, because we have people watching on this, I'd just like to point out that, and there are members on this committee, that in 2016, it was Melton Borough Council that saved this site by putting on an Article 4 regulation on the site when the owner at the time, the NHS, was more than happy and at the time threatened legal action with us to knocking the building down. So Melton Borough Council has listened to people there, and obviously we've got this decision, but unfortunately, as Councillor Brown said, our hands are tied, and I look forward to when it comes back to committee.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Exactly, well, similar things to what I was going to say. I've got reams and reams of comments, and one of them did include about the amount of work we did to put an Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights in 2016, which then removed the right for the demolition of the workhouse and vagrant cells. So we tried to get our ducks in order, in a row. And I do believe the NHS were not terribly happy with that, but we did do something to protect our heritage at that time. It is disappointing that we can't continue and hear this application this evening, but we have to deal with what's in front of us this evening. Thank you. The next one was Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Yes, just to reiterate everything that everybody else is going to say, and for everybody that is listening, and I hope people are listening, that we do take note, a lot of us take note of what everybody else is saying. It is our history. I am very keen on that for Melton and for the borough, and I think that probably in the past sometimes our history has not been thought of enough. And I feel very strongly about this, and I do hope that we can do something with our history there. Unfortunately, we haven't done enough, I don't think, with the War Memorial Hospital, but that's another site. But yeah, we are listening and we will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on quickly what Councillor Higgins said, just quickly, when I was when I was there at the site visit, I did notice how bad it was, that the NHS hadn't really looked after it whatsoever. It was in a real state of disrepair, which was very disappointing. And it does look as if what I've read earlier on this week, that the NHS did have these buildings as listed, and they may have contributed for the old ones, the 18th century ones, to be delisted, which is very disappointing as well. Just one other thing regarding the comments from Leicestershire County Council Highways. Are we actually looking at a short-term or deferral, just from the harsh words that were said, and just regarding this issue anyway, regarding a heritage site like this in Melton Mowbray, and also for the whole of the wider borough, are we able to set up a new Heritage Watch working group, which is obviously linked to planning committee for the foreseeable future, just to make sure that we are definitely understanding and reviewing our heritage sites that are earmarked for develop as part of the local plan in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I would think the latter part of your question would be something for our cabinet member for heritage to pick up, perhaps in a different session. But I think it is a very worthwhile question. Do officers want to come back and answer the other two parts of?
On the first question, yeah, the words from the county council are very strongly asserted, but they're not complicated. So I think we could turn that round quite quickly. And I've kind of promised the applicants that we'll be back next month, so the 25th of June. I maybe should have said we'll do our best to be back next month.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, so thank you everybody.
Chairman, can I just interrupt? I don't want to prolong the discussion, but
I was just going to ask Councillor Chandler if she wanted to say anything, so I didn't see her.
If Mr. Worley is suggesting that we could come back with this next month, can we please have some meetings where we can look properly at what the alternatives for the vagrant cells are? I mean, there have been lots of suggestions. Some of them I don't believe would work, but some of the others possibly would. But we need to get some proper costings for what it'll cost to do those sort of things. And perhaps, and I know that, the council hasn't got that sort of money to be able to do lots of the things that have been suggested. So perhaps some of the residents might consider that wish to keep them so much, perhaps crowdfunding or working with the council to see how we can get those funds.
Yes, that's a very valid point. I was going to suggest that we have dialogue to forge a way forward with this, with the ward councillors and other councillors throughout the town and the borough, so that we can probably find a way through and have it come back to planning in more of a shape and form that we can deal with on the night, as opposed to something that's quite obscure and we're not too sure on how the vagrant cells are going to fit in, if they're going to fit in at all. I am quite happy with the fact that we've got the conversion of the workhouse, including the wings. That was a huge sort of benefit. Yeah, but we now need to work on what can and can't be done with the vagrant cells.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you.
Councillor Chandler, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm moving on to next week.
Yes.
When are we getting the papers? I mean, we had an email today, which I took exception to, saying
we are still live, Councillor Chandler. Would it be best to discuss this with
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Yeah, save that for later, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adele.
That's all right.
Councillor Potters, you've already spoken. We've got Councillor Holmes. Your hand is still up raised.
Yeah, no, I did put it down. I keep putting it down. Sorry.
It's back up again now.
Lower down. I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry. Councillor Steadman, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Chair. I've got a question for Jim. If we're running at £600,000 short in section 106 on this site, that's over £15,000 per property. Would we be looking at losing the hospital site and the retention of the hospital site to achieve this level of contribution?
My honest answer is I don't know, because we haven't tested that scenario. We, the applicants, haven't tested that scenario, because it always came in with retention of some part of one of the buildings. My gut feeling is even raising this thing to the ground, dealing with a blank sheet, wouldn't create that amount of headroom. but I can't prove that from the information we've got in front of us at the moment.
Thank you for that response. I would like to apologise to the speakers. You've taken the time to come along this evening, and I would like to apologise that we haven't managed to hear you, but obviously events overtook our agenda. But thank you very much for attending, and look forward to hearing from you when this matter comes back to committee again. Thank you. Right, item 5, I have no urgent business on the agenda. Thank you. I think that concludes the meeting at 26 minutes past 7.
I wanted to come in, Madam Chairman.
After the meeting is closed, is this?
Oh, I thought you'd closed it. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
I have closed the meeting now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are we still live on YouTube?
Yeah, so Chair, I don't have any option other than to end the meeting, so we can't stay in the meeting. So once it's ended, that's just the end of the meeting, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I don't have any other option.
Councillor Chandler, if you'd like to ask that question of Adele after the meeting, then please. Is that okay?
She may be best raising it with Democratic Services, Chair.
Yes, I would think so. Thank you. Is that all right with you, Councillor Chandler?
No, it's not really.
No. No.
We used to get the planning papers on the Thursday, 8 days before the planning meetings. We had time to read the reports before we went on site visits on the Monday. Now we're lucky if we get the papers by the Tuesday with the meetings on the Thursday. This is totally unacceptable. I don't mind whether I'm public thing or what.
Yeah, could I just say that they do come out in electronic format so that you can have.
Well, I can't, as you know, I'm not to read off a computer.
Okay, right. I didn't realise that. Thank you.
Well, the officers all know.
Right.
That's been standing for about 8 years.
So
can we ensure that they're sent out tomorrow if they're ready, please, by special delivery, please?
Well, they won't come till Monday at the earliest then, because there's no post on Saturdays now.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, if I could say the papers were sent today by special post, so they should arrive with members tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much for that confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
But I'll just say, Madam Chairman, I shall not have visited the sites when we have the Zoom briefing on Monday morning, because I can't go till Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon.
Okay. Right. I think I'll pick that up with Louise after probably tomorrow and see if we can move it around a little bit. Okay. Thank you very much for that, everybody.
Same with me. I can't get on Monday either.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to close the meeting now, Adele, that's wonderful. Okay. Thank you everyone for attending, and I do apologise again to the speakers. Thank you.